Mr. Wade Petersen. A consulting firm specializing in photo and video services. He was an associate producer of Freedom Watch, starring Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox Business Network.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Are the rights of man limited, or are they more numerous than the stars? Are we libertarians prepared to shoulder the responsibility of governance of the United States, or will our distaste for power cause us to allow our enemies to take the field? Are we, the members of the Libertarian Party, prepared tomorrow to go to war against the forces of democratic socialist and populist nationalism? E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Our campaign for liberty is prepared to lead this party and our nation to great victories for our common cause of economic freedom and personal liberty. I promise that no matter the outcome of tomorrow's election, at the end of the day, we will all stand together, united, and we will fight arm in arm for the future of our nation and for the future of liberty itself. Thank you.
For those who are listening to a libertarian debate for the very first time and don't know what a libertarian is, please explain what a libertarian is and what is the difference between a libertarian and a conservative.
Very simple. Libertarian is fiscally conservative and socially whatever you want, provided you don't force it on anyone else. In society's mainstream culture, generally, conservatives tend to believe that government should enforce morality upon society. This is distinct from libertarianism. Libertarianism believes that you own your life and body and should be able to do with it as you please, provided you harm no one else, and that the government should stay out of our personal lives.
Most libertarians think both major parties are bad, but that the Republican Party is, at least as to economic issues, the lesser of two evils. What do you say to people who believe that, in the best case scenario, the Libertarian candidate this year might get 10%. In a close election, the Libertarian will likely take more votes from the Republican, making it more likely that Hillary will win the election. What is your response to that line of thinking?
When faced with the choice of the lesser of two evils, vote for neither. Exit polls in Virginia after Robert Sarvis's race for governor showed that he pulled more from the Democrats than he did from the Republicans. In order to arrive at left or right, you could be born a Republican or a Democrat. But in order to become a libertarian, one must first think to arrive at our positions. Of course, the friends of big governments always look at us libertarians and say, you look like you've had a little too much to think. Vote Libertarian.
Donald Trump, when asked to name 3 functions of government, said national security, healthcare, and education. Where did he go wrong?
Well, I'd like to build a wall around Donald Trump and make Bernie Sanders pay for it. See what has become of our nation when a man who is truly the definition of a fascist sits at the top of the Republican ticket. The forces of darkness are on the march in the United States, and only the Libertarian Party can save us. We will stand united against the forces of populist nationalism, because nationalism is only ever a means to an end, not the end itself. If nationalism leads to individual rights, then it is useful. But the Founding Fathers knew that when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for us to list the causes of our separation, we must have a revolution. And if Donald Trump wins the nomination, we should revolt!
Should illegal immigration be stopped? Do you believe in open borders? If so, what does open borders mean?
I believe that a free market in labor is just as effective in lifting people out of poverty as a free market in commodities. Because what business does the government have to get in between an employer and a private contract between an employee? Borders are imaginary lines drawn on a map by politicians. And the nation state sees fit only to serve the needs of the individuals. Now, despite the fact that I believe in the freest world possible, I believe that we as libertarians can offer to the American people a solution that we have had. And our history shows that during the progressive era, ooh, progressives, but good that we had an Ellis Island policy. Oh, man, yeah, it's, the ship is here. The immigrants are here.
Right time. Dr. Feldman. Dr. Feldman?
I was buzzed over a couple of times, yeah. So America is the land of opportunity. Give us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to break free. I will streamline this immigration system, and we will have liberty for Americans, and we will be welcoming immigrants under my administration.
Should taxpayers pay for or subsidize education at any level, whether K through 12 or post-secondary education?
Well, Carrie took all my good applause lines. America, you wish. Yeah, America became the greatest nation in the world because of the one-room schoolhouse with nothing more than a pencil and a piece of paper. And now we spend more on our education than any civilized nation in the world. It's not an issue of money. It's an issue of centralization, central economic planning. We must stop these central economic planners and their control over the lives of our children. We need more homeschooling. We need to allow the states to decide these problems. We need to end the Federal Department of Education once and for all.
Even President Obama said the three biggest entitlements programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, are, in his word, unsustainable. They comprise nearly 50% of the federal budget. What would you do about them?
I say it's time to allow young people to opt out of Social Security. But they stole the money from us in the first place, so I think they should have to give it back. Now, when it comes to how we can get out of Social Security's problems, I think that if we did implement a flat tax on the road to abolishing the income tax entirely, that we would get more revenue, because as of now, only 27% of the suckers pay their taxes. If we had a flat tax, perhaps we would get more revenue and we could plug the gap with Social Security as we allow young people to opt out. It's time for us to opt out.
If you don't believe government should force people into some sort of Social Security or forced savings system, what happens when someone has grown old but was too indifferent or irresponsible to have set aside savings? What should happen to that person?
No one was dying in the streets before Social Security. This is about social engineering and control. It's time to end Social Security and welfare programs once and for all. Now, a lot of people don't know this story, but when the Pilgrims first came to the United States, they had a system. It was from each according to his ability and to each according to his need. And what happened? They ate each other because they were starving to death. How did they create the system that we have? The bounty, the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. The Thanksgiving feast came because they had private property rights and they had free markets, and that's how we will take care of the poor.
Does global warming or climate change pose a threat to the planet?
The free market didn't bankrupt the coal industry. It was regulations and President Obama. The greatest polluter on earth is the U.S. federal government. The free market can solve the problems of the environment. But what use is a clean environment if we have no freedom? I believe that whether or not global warming is true or not, that the government should stay the hell out of it. Now, I'm not smart enough to know whether or not climate change is killing us or not either, Governor, respectfully. But it was not the free market that bankrupted the coal industry. Hillary Clinton has said that she will end it. That's why you must nominate me so that I can take her out and we can restore liberty in America for every industry.
What taxes, if any, do you believe in? How should government fund its essential duties and obligations?
I believe in a voluntary society freely, totally, completely. If we are to have taxes, why not a lottery? A lottery is just a tax on people who are bad at math. Our first president of the United States, George Washington, did sign lottery taxes because they said, George, how are we going to build the roads? So he found a way without coercing his citizens to allow a chance for us to find the best way for us to serve one another. The question isn't who will build the roads, we will build the roads. So when it comes to taxation, taxation is theft. But the end.
Should there be a minimum wage? If not, how do you prevent employees from, as the left often says, exploiting workers?
The minimum wage was originally passed to stop black laborers from competing with white labor. It was racist. Now, the real minimum wage is $0, and it is harmful for the poor. Why? Because it harms the people who are unemployed, who are unskilled, who are unable to get jobs. Because if you have to pay $15 an hour, you're going to hire the best worker you can instead of the boy next door. We must put a stop to the minimum wage so that we can lift the poor and the middle class out of poverty.
Should government, whether state or local, fund infrastructure, roads, bridges, sewers, electrical grids? And if government does not do it, who or what will?
Ah, the old who will build the roads. Roads, roads, roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads. Because the truth is that in the future we'll have a jetpack. The statists are unimaginative. They don't see a future where freedom can solve the problems that are created by government. The free market can solve these problems. Take a look at what happened in Hurricane Katrina when people were suffering and there was no electricity. What happened? People stepped in and they started offering generators, and people said, oh wow, look, they're charging for these generators 2, 3 times more than you might have learned on the free market. But they called them price gougers. But the truth is that supply and demand worked. And looks like I'm out of time, but who will build the roads? More roads! We don't need that. We don't need government to build roads.
Assume someone has a pre-existing medical condition and cannot get health insurance. What would you do about it?
If you own a fire insurance company and people were allowed to buy insurance after their house was on fire, you would go bankrupt. The laws of supply and demand will eventually catch up to them. And what this does is it forces insurance companies into an untenable economic situation because the communists want single-payer health care. It's time for us to allow the free market to work, end the insurance cartels by allowing people to purchase insurance across state lines.
On trade, would you continue trading with partners who impose tariffs on American goods and on those who engage in, as Donald Trump puts it, currency manipulation?
If foreign countries want to throw rocks in their harbors, let them. We should be the beacon of liberty and free trade. Even Paul Krugman believes that free trade lifts people out of poverty. 1 billion lives saved due to free market capitalism and free trade, and as President of the United States, that's what I would champion.
What should be done about the Federal Reserve? Is there a legitimate function for the Fed?
It's time to kill the bank. As Andrew Jackson said, you are a den of vipers and I will rout you out, and by God, I will rout you out. And the Federal Reserve can be ended not through an act of Congress, but through competition. If we can allow gold, silver, and bitcoins to compete against the Federal Reserve, we will have alternative monetary institutions. We've gone without a central bank 3 times in our history. Thomas Jefferson believed that we don't need a central bank. We can have a free market in money because money is not a creation of government. Money is a creation of the marketplace. Allow a free market in money and we will restore prosperity in America once again.
What government cabinet departments would you eliminate?
Well, I'm from Missouri, and we love our guns and our whiskey, which is why I think that the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Industry, ought to be a store, not a government agency. The President of the United States does actually have the authority to effectively end one institution of the federal government, and that's the DEA, and here's how. We can end the federal war on drugs by instructing the chief of the DEA to set the federal drug schedule of all drugs to 0. This would effectively kick the war on drugs back to the states, and we could end the DEA that way.
What do you think of the Iran deal? Does it pose a threat to Israel? And if so, is that a concern of America?
Well, here comes the wonky journalist who's actually done the research here. The Iran deal was problematic because it was an executive agreement and not an act of Congress. The Senate is supposed to approve and ratify treaties, not the president.
Congress authorized the president to make it.
No, I believe that we should have free trade with all countries despite what their status is. Why? Because capitalism brings down tyranny around the world.
President Obama has called the Hiroshima bomb an act of evil. Do you agree?
Hey, no offense, you started, I'm gonna end it. Let me tell you something. When it comes to the bomb is just like any other weapon, just like a tool, like a drone or a gun or anything like that. If you face an existential threat, you have the right to defend yourselves, and under no circumstances would I ever endanger the national security of the citizens of the United States. That being said, the Japanese were killing 6,000 civilians a month. 6,000 civilians a month, the Bataan Death March and the rape of Nanking. We have a right to defend ourselves using any means necessary. Absolutely.
Do you believe radical Islam poses a threat to Europe, America, to Western civilization itself?
Truly the most dangerous religion in the world is statism. But yes, classical liberalism must be defended from violent ideologies. But if we are to do so, we must do so constitutionally, and not necessarily always through force of arms. The Enlightenment must be restored, and classical liberal thinking must be defended. And I say that if we are going to fight radical Islam as President of the United States, we must do so within the law, constitutionally, and never go outside the powers of the executive branch. Only go to war if there is a declaration of war. Otherwise, letters of marque and reprisal, and that is the only way that the President has any authority to defend the United States using the U.S. military.
Was it wrong for America to have intervened and fought in World War I? Was it wrong for America to have intervened and fought in World War II?
It was wrong to intervene in World War I because the sinking of Lusitania, actually they found out that there were munitions. So they were violating the law by sneaking munitions in past the embargo. But after we are attacked in World War II, we have every right to defend ourselves. But we would have never gotten involved in World War II if we would have stayed the hell out of World War I.
We spend more on our military than the next 15 or so nations combined. How large shall our military be? Do we spend too much? Where would you cut?
My pick for Secretary of Defense, General Mad Dog Mattis, had a philosophy, and that is be polite, be professional, but have a plan to kill everyone you meet. I do think we need a strong national defense, but the focus is on defense. We have not had an audit since before 9/11. As President of the United States, I will demand an audit of the Pentagon. The Pentagon has spent $1.5 trillion on an F-35 program that can't even compete with the F-16. I will find the waste, fraud, and abuse, and we will make meaningful cuts to the military, and we will put a stop to the military-industrial complex in the United States.
Would you, as president, pull the United States out of NATO, the International Monetary Fund, and/or the United Nations?
If the Congress were to send me appropriate legislation, absolutely.
Are libertarians isolationists?
It is not we non-interventionists who are isolationists. It is those who go and bomb foreign countries and cause people to hate us that cause us to be more isolated in the world. But some are isolationists. And isn't isolationism splendid sometimes? We have Amish in this country, and they like to have their isolation. That's freedom. That's secession. People ought to be free to be isolated if they so desire. But it is not we non-interventionists who want us to be more isolated. It is time for the government to get the hell out of the Middle East and bring the troops home.
As between the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, which is the most anti-freedom, anti-libertarian? Or put another way, from a libertarian point of view, which is the lesser of two evils?
They call us the third party, but we feel like we live in a one-party state because they're really just two wings of the same bird. And one wing loves war and socialism and stimulus and bailouts, and the other one loves welfare and corporatism. The Libertarian Party is the second party in the United States, and when I'm president of the United States, we will finally be a two-party system again.
When does life begin? At what point has a pregnancy gone so far that it should be a crime for a woman to have an abortion?
Well, I am not a scientist or a doctor. I do not know when life begins. I believe it most likely begins at conception. And that means that all humans deserve the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that includes the unborn.
Do you believe in any form of gun control? Should a child be able to walk into a gun store and get a gun? What about ex-felons? What about automatic weapons like AK-47s or M16s?
Well, I believe in gun control. I think that we need to control the government's use of guns. Honestly, no, it's an enumerated right. I believe in a world where gay married couples can protect their marijuana fields with fully automatic machine guns, baby. The Constitution of the United States says shall not be infringed. It is an enumerated right, and it doesn't say muskets, it says arms. We have the right to bear arms, and that right will be protected under a Petersen administration for once and for all.
Should one have to get a government-issued license to marry? If same-sex marriage should be legal, what about multiple spouses? Where, if anywhere, would you draw the line?
I believe in a total separation of marriage and state. The government has no business interfering in private contracts between consenting adults, no matter how many.
North Carolina passed a law that said, as to the public sector, one shall use the bathroom that corresponds with the gender on his or her birth certificate. How do you feel about that law?
The problem with socialists is that they confuse the distinction between government and society. If it is a government building, then perhaps there should be unisex. But private property owners have the right to discriminate if they so choose, and that is freedom.
What kind of person would you put on the Supreme Court, and should Congress hold hearings on Obama's nominee?
Yes, Congress should obey the law, but when I am president of the United States next year, let's put my old buddy, Judge Andrew Napolitano, on the Supreme Court.
Reportedly, some 83% of law professors are Democrats. As a libertarian, you must think this has real-world consequences. What are they?
Boy, that's tough. I've never met a damn Democrat that I liked. Let me tell you something. The Democrats are not the problem. It is the belief in the authority of the federal government. In order for us to have a freer society, the problem is not with the two-party system. The problem is with the idea that we are in a left-right paradigm. It's black and white thinking. We cannot always blame the parties for our problems. The problem is the government.
If a parent chooses not to send his or her child to school, should the government intervene?
For too long and too often, public education has been about indoctrination. No, absolutely not. The government should not. I believe in homeschooling. I do believe in vouchers, and I think that we should have a separation of education and state.
Should all drug use be made legal or decriminalized, whether marijuana or heroin? And what do you say about people who argue that if you do that, it would lead to more rampant drug abuse?
Drugs are dangerous. Drugs are dangerous because they're illegal. Drug dealers don't check IDs. When people take drugs, they don't know what they're getting. I believe that if we were to decriminalize all drugs, that we would be living in a safer world. But that's the political issue. The moral issue is that you own your life, you own your body, and you ought to be able to put in it what you please, provided you harm no one else.
If you believe in legalizing all drugs, would you at least make certain drugs illegal for children?
The president has no constitutional authority to regulate drugs. That being said, at the state level, I would support some legislation that would stop children from being allowed to purchase drugs and prosecute anyone who would put a child in danger, because I do believe that children do need some protection. Yes, you should not be able to sell heroin to a 5-year-old.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 ended discrimination in both the private sector and the public sector. Senator Barry Goldwater voted against it for libertarian reasons. He did not feel it was the government's job to tell a private business owner what to do. Senator Al Gore Sr. voted against it because he opposed integration. If you had been in the Senate, how would you have voted?
Well, the senator has the power of the filibuster, so I would have filibustered until we abolished Title II, and then we would have gotten rid of the government discrimination.
Should someone have to have a government-issued license to drive a car?
Hell no.
You now have 60 seconds to make a closing argument.
I have a gift for you all. My home, my party that I've been in the last 9 years. Tomorrow, I'm prepared to give you a powerful, debt-free campaign with a serious strategy to actually win the White House in 2016. I offer this to you humbly, with love and affection, as sincere as the expressions of happiness and joy on the face of all my supporters. For this is not a campaign about one man. It's a campaign about a revolution of we, the people.
Ask a Libertarian Facebook fan page is spreading awareness of libertarianism and informing non-libertarians while empowering those who support liberty on a daily basis. This is your opportunity to be empowered, and let us advocate libertarianism for you at facebook.com/askalibertarian.